Please be seated. The court is now in session. Today, the chamber continues to hear testimony of witness Kang Kek-yew alias Duch. Mr. Am Hoi, please report the attendance of the parties and other individuals to today's proceedings. Gratier, Mr. President, for today's proceedings, all parties to this case are present. Mr. Nuji is present in the holding cell downstairs. He has waived his right to be present in the courtroom. His waiver has been delivered to the greffier. The witness who is to continue his testimony today, that is Kang Kek-yew alias Duch, is present in the courtroom. Thank you. President, thank you, Mr. M. Hoi. The Chamber now decides on the request by Nuon Chea. The Chamber has received a waiver from Nuon Chea dated 8 June 2016, which states that due to his health, headache, back pain, he cannot sit or concentrate for long, and in order to effectively participate in future hearings, he requests to waive his presence at the 8 June 2016 hearing. Having seen the medical report of Nuon Chea by the duty doctor for the accused at the ECCC dated 8 June 2016, which notes that Nuon Chea has back pain and occasional dizziness when he sits for long, and recommends that the Chamber shall grant him his request so that he can follow the proceedings remotely from the holding cell downstairs. Based on the above information and pursuant to Rule 81.5 of the ECCC internal rules, the Chamber grants Nuon Chea his request to follow the proceedings remotely from a holding cell downstairs via and audio-visual means. The Chamber instructs the AV unit personnel to link the proceedings to the room downstairs so that Nuon Chea can follow. That applies for the whole day. The Chamber now hands the floor to the co-prosecutors to put further questions to the witness. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors, Counsel. Good morning, Mr. Kang Kek-yew. We were talking about yesterday the killing of the 4 children of Thach Chea and his wife. That last entry in the execution list, E3 1539, that I showed you yesterday, and number 159, referred to the children simply as the children of Thach Chea, and didn't mention them by name. Can you tell us why was it that the 4 children of Thach Chea weren't identified by name in the S21 list?
That was the practice, and if I make a conclusion now based on the practice, I could say that Thach Chea's children did not hold any position at the time. And as I testified yesterday, people spoke about the children, and they were pretty young. And at S21, there was no list specifically made for children.
Thank you. We also talked yesterday of how Thach Chea's wife was killed by being used for people to practice live surgery. And a meeting you and Nat had with Son Sen, where his only criticism was that this had been done to the wife of a well-known person. During the period that you reported to Noon Chea, later on in the regime, when you reported to Noon Chea, did he continue the practice of using S-21 prisoners for medical experiments?
To my knowledge, that was the only times that live surgery was practiced. And later on, no live surgery practice was put in place.
What about other medical experiments? Was there any time when Noon Chea ordered you to do some tests using S-21 prisoners on some medicine or pills?
Thank you for the question. Yes, there were such cases. When the confession of the enemy spoke about the plans to use pills to kill or to poison the cadres, and after the searching, 4 tablets were found. And actually, Bong Noon called me to see him and gave me the 4 pills. And when I returned home, I threw away the pills and I ground paracetamol and put the powder back into the capsules, and I gave them to prisoners. And that was based on the instruction from Uncle Noon. But nothing happened because I actually changed the powder, and it was replaced by paracetamol powder.
When Noon Chea gave you these 4 pills, what did he ask you to do with them, and did he tell you what the pills were?
The pills were not meant for treatment. The pills were found based on the confession of an enemy that they actually had pills in order to poison Pol Pot. Then a search was conducted at the house of that confessed prisoner, and Bong Noon gave me the pills in order to test whether the pills were poisonous or not. But in fact, I changed the powder, so it was not poisonous.
Thank you. That's clear. And yesterday, we also talked about who the prisoners were in the early days of S-21. And I want to ask you about something you said on this at your trial on the 15th of June 2009. This is at E3/5799, testimony of 15 June 2009 around 9:31 in the morning. This is what you said, quote, "During the time that I was the deputy chairman, the people who entered S21 were mostly the former officers, the former technicians. When I became chairman, the former officers came in less frequency from the countryside who were arrested and sent. So the majority of those for the second phase were the people inside the ranks of the revolutionary part of Kampuchea. End of quote. Is it correct that during the period you were deputy chairman of S21, the people who entered were mostly former Lon Nol officers and former technicians? And could you explain what you meant by technicians?
When I spoke about former technicians, I rarely recalled their names. However, I recall one technician from a paper mill. His name was Pat. And amongst them, there was one engineer named Liu Swanta. And that happened when I was the deputy chief. I actually conducted the questioning, and I taught them how to question the people. I called one police inspector, Chet Ew. And besides that, I cannot recall other names.
Do I understand correctly then that when you referred to former technicians, you meant people who held technical work positions in the former regime, people like engineers or people who had technical skills in the former regime? Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And one more subject I want to try to get some clarification on is the role of the Takmau prison. In the initial period of S21, and I'm talking about the period from October 1975 until April 1976, before you moved into the school premises, Tuol Sleng. Were the sites that you were located in Phnom Penh, the houses, the police judiciaire, were they used primarily for interrogation? And were prisoners detained who were not being interrogated at Takmau during that period?
I actually went only for one time to Takmau prison, and I knew one prisoner there who came from Sector 25, and I did not get any instructions regarding the functioning or the list of prisoners at the Takmau prison. As for those who were brought to the areas near Punyayat school were different groups from those who were detained at the Takmau. That's all I can say about the Takmau prison.
Let me read to you a couple of excerpts from your testimony during your trial. And on the 22nd of April 2009 at 15:28 in the afternoon, this is document E3/524, E3/524, you gave the following testimony at 15:28 in the afternoon. Quote, "The Tak Mau prison was a big prison, but the prison at the south of the current Tuol Sleng Museum was an interrogation place. A bit later, Nat changes the place from the west of the current Tuol Sleng Museum to the general headquarters, or the police headquarters, which was called PJ. But that was just an interrogation place. It was not like at the Tak Mau prison." End of quote. And then on the 29th of April 2009 in your trial, document E3/5795, E3/5795, on that day at 15:34 in the afternoon. Quote, your testimony. "For the Tak Mau prison, initially it belongs to the Division 703, and later on it belongs to S21, and then later on it belongs to the Ministry of Social Affairs." Does that refresh your memory, Mr. Witness? Is it correct that the buildings you were using in Phnom Penh before you went to Tuol Sleng, the schoolyard, the school premises, that those buildings were used primarily for interrogation, and that the Tak Mau prison was under S21 during those initial months? Is that correct?
The word S21 was established on 15 August 1975 when Son Sen called Nat and I to meet him that Angkar were to create a new Santebal office, and he asked what number should be used. Then Nat said it should be 21, and the word S or So in Khmer is a short form for Santebal, and that is the initial inception of S21. As for the prison, belongs to Division 703 and the National Provision before, with the number 43 or 44 were part of S21 or reintegrated into S21, but I was not sure about the arrangement of the transportation of those prisoners. And they were transferred from the south part of Punyayat school to PJ prison, and I was called to go there at the time. So it was unclear, although they may belong to S21, but I never interrogated the people who were detained at that prison. I interrogated some people at S21, and I taught some staff how to interrogate, and they were the one who interrogated those prisoners at those locations. And one of them was Paul Lee that I taught him how to interrogate, and I think this is part of the case file. And later on, Tak Mau prison was no longer used as prisoners were no longer there, and Nat was transferred to the general staff. So when the Takma prison was vacant, Son Sen made a call to me that the Ministry of Social Affairs wanted to occupy that prison, and I told Son Sen that it should not be given to the Ministry of Social Affairs, since there were many bodies buried on the compound, and that we needed time to exhume them. And later on, Ho came to tell me that those bodies were exhumed and cremated, and except there were two bodies which were under the sewage canal that they could not remove. So I made that report to Son Sen, and further on Son Sen made that report to the party. This is in relation to the role of Takma prison as well as the PJ prison and the prisons around the Punyaya, the school premises.
Thank you for that clarification. And during the period before, again, the period from October 1975 to March or April 1976, before you went into the Punyaya school, where were the prisoners taken for execution? Do you know whether prisoners during that period were taken to Takmau for execution?
Before I respond to that question, allow me to speak briefly on the principle of leadership of the CPK. I was in a leadership position, however, I was not the first person in that position. For that reason, I did not know well about the affairs done by my predecessors, including what happened at June 8. And in some instances, people were smashed at houses surrounding the vicinity of S21. For that reason, it is difficult for me to specify a particular period of what happened and where. Of course, I was overall in charge, but individuals also had their personal or their individual responsibilities to conduct their task.
Yes, just for some clarification, you referred to Changak, or at least in the translation mentioned Changak. We're talking about well before Changak. We're talking about the period before you had even located to the Punyaya premises. Let me read to you another excerpt from your trial. This is from the 17th of June, 2009, document E3/5801, E3/5801, at 9:20 in the morning. This was the testimony. Question: the location where the S21 committee selected for killing those people, where was it? I mean the killing and the burial site. Your answer: Mr. President, there are three main sites. One was at the psychiatric hospital in Takmau. We exhumed the bones and we burned the bones, so there was nothing left. The second site was the area surrounding S21 in Phnom Penh, also known as the Tulslang prison. And the third site was the killing fields at Chungek. End of quote. Does that refresh your memory? Was there, during this initial period, do you know whether ex-prisoners were executed at Takmau? in the initial period or phase of S-21?
In reference to my statement during my previous trial, as well as what I have just stated, is not different. Of course, there was an execution site at the Khmer, and that's when the Ministry of Social Affairs wanted to use the site. Son Sen made a phone call to me, and I said, please, we needed to clean it up first, that is to burn the bones before we could deliver that location to the Ministry of Social Affairs. So sometime when it was urgent or necessary, people will be buried at the surrounding areas of S-21, and sometimes we had to spray kind of powder on top of the dead bodies in order to avoid any spread of infection. And also people were buried at the Chiang Ai, and in fact Chiang Ai had been in operation before I worked at S-21, and I could only speak rather precisely about people who were sent to S-21 and not at the other sites.
Okay, thank you. We'll talk more about Chiang Ai later. Last question on the Tak Mau prison. When was that site, when was it that it was transferred to the Ministry of Social Affairs?
I do not recall the exact date. However, it happened before Son Sen went to the front battlefield, because before that he and I still had some phone conversations.
Let me see if I can help you again with some from 6 years ago when you gave testimony. On the 22nd of April 2009, document E3/524 at 15:49 in the afternoon, you said, I quote, "The Kamau prison existed until May or July. Then we organized Ponea Yat High School to detain prisoners." And 6 days later, on the 28th of April 2009, document E3/5794 at 9:48 in the morning through 9:57, you specified that the Tak Mau Psychiatric Hospital was used by S-21 until at least June 1976, after which it was handed over to the Ministry of Social Affairs. Does that refresh your memory? Was it sometime in mid-1976, sometime May, June, or July of that year, that Tak Mau was transferred to the Ministry of Social Affairs?
Regarding the closure of Tak Mau prison, it could happen around that time. and that my personal conclusion based on the time that Nat was transferred out. Before that, he actually instructed her to finish all the remaining tasks. However, this is purely my personal conclusion, and the Khmer prison had been vacant since, even though later on it was transferred to the Ministry of Social Affairs. Some houses around that area still belongs to S21. So the prison was vacant for a period of time. And as to the date of the handing over to the Ministry of Social Affairs, I cannot recall it. But it happened before Son Sen went to the front battlefield. So it happened between these months. However, this is purely my personal conclusion.
Was he located in Tak Mau? And if so, when did he move from Tak Mau and begin working with you in Phnom Penh at S21?
Before I was appointed as the deputy chief, Ho was closely with Nat. He was based in Phnom Penh. I did not know who was in charge of the prison at Tak Mau. So Ho was not based at Tak Mau. As I told you yesterday, when I met Sopo, I saw him reading the confession of a prisoner outside the prison building. I knew Ho clearly because Ho and I used to be in prison at Preso during the Lunal regime, but we did not have any work relationship at that time. And as I would like to confirm that Ho and Nat, they worked closely together.
Mr. President, may I provide to the witness the two documents, document E3/3187, E3/3187, and also document E3/2017, E3/2017.
President, yes, your request is granted.
I've handed you two documents, Mr. Witness. The first, E3/3187, is a list, it's titled List of Military Prisoners, and it identifies 49 former Lon Nol military personnel from various locations, but primarily sectors 15 and 25, and a place, Tale Village, who were sent to S21 between June and September 1976. The ERN references for this document, as it comes, is part of a bigger document. For the record, Khmer 00008785 to 8786. The English reference 00874-237 through 241, and there is no French translation. This first list, Mr. Witness, there are some handwritten annotations, if you look at the first page, that appear next immediately to the right of the prisoner's name, there are annotations with the dates. Do you recognize who added those annotations and what they signify?
I'm not sure about this annotation. I do not know who was the author of it.
If you could turn to the second document I handed to you, E32017, and the ERN references here. This is Khmer 000211137, English 0018367 through 672. This is a list of prisoners taken from Ta Li. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name of that village correctly, but it is a list of 31 former Lon Nol soldiers who had arrived mostly at the end of August 1976 and had died. Can you tell us where was this village, Ta Li village, and do you remember why there were former Lon Nol military who were being sent to S21 from Ta Li in August 1976?
I don't know where Talai village is located. I have never been there before.
Let me move on now to my next subject, which concerns something you talked about yesterday, which is the children, spouses, and families that were sent to S21. You made a reference to this yesterday in relation to the children of Tachchia, but can you tell us generally what happened to spouses and children of people who were sent to S21 and accused of being traitors, accused of being enemies of the regime? What happened to the spouses and children of those people?
Let me clarify a bit. Which Tachi are you referring to? Could you please tell me which one of Tachia you are referring to?
I think maybe it was, I was referring to Tachchia. My question isn't about Tachchia, but yesterday you talked about why the children had been arrested. My question is in general. In general, during the time you were at S21, what happened to the spouses and children of people who were sent to S21 and accused of being enemies?
The spouse and children of the prisoners were treated in the same way as the prisoners that means they would be smashed. So even Thakchir's spouse and children, although Thakchir was the minister during the Lon Nol regime, their spouse and children would face the same treatment. Even Won Wait, who was a senior minister in the regime, when Brother Won was arrested, his spouse was also arrested. And his child, who was sent to study in China in the aircraft warplane. So when his father was arrested, the child and the spouse were also arrested.
And can you tell us how it came about, or whether you received instructions from your superior? How is it that this practice of spouses and children being arrested and smashed came about? And so I'm asking you whether you received instructions, whether you had discussions with your superiors on this. How did this practice come about?
Related to this practice, based on what I remember, it was implemented after 17 April 1975. Before that, children were spared and they were raised and brought up. At that time, we had no principle to smash children.
Are you sure about that? Were there children at M13 who you wanted to save but were unable to save? Can you tell us about, do you remember an incident at M13 where you were required to execute children?
Yes, there were those who were saved. First, it was the children and spouse of District Chief Phuen. They were later on sent to Posat. And so two children of Comrade Phuen, who was district chief, they survived, and his wife was also spared. And for another event, I saved another child. Whom I saved first when I became chief of the M13. The child's name was, I cannot remember his name now. And then I sent the child to the commune office of Om Leang. I also tried to save and raise up Saun's child. I remembered that there was a time when I was instructed to kill the wives of soldiers who were believed to come in and spy on us.
Read to you a written statement you provided. This is document E3/5752, E3/5752, and this refers to, I think, one of the people you just mentioned, Sang Un. This is what you said in this document. When I was at M13, I strived to keep the 3 children of Sang Un. But since they could not be kept fed and kept alive, I gave in to this view of fearing revenge and followed the opinion of Professor Son Sen after that. In the language of the communists, especially the Kampuchean communists, they called my stance of letting the children live a stance lacking in class anger. After the creation of S21, I kept on letting them do it. End of quote. And also in a written statement you provided titled On Minors at S21, again, document E3/5758, E3/5758, paragraph 2A, and talking about this unsuccessful effort to keep those 3 children alive, you said, quote, seizing the opportunity of my defeat, saving the lives of the children, Son Sen gave additional instructions on how the stance had to be firm. End of quote. What I'd like, the clarification, the follow-up I'd like, what instructions, what do you remember Son Sen saying about execution of the children and the stance? What stance was he referring to when he talked about the children?
Sun Sen and I contacted each other almost on a regular basis, nearly every day. Let me correct, every day. When he wanted to talk to me, especially in the evening at around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, he came to talk to me and gave me the instructions. So there were many instructions that he gave to me. Regarding the phone call, when we press a button and then it led to a different frequency that other people could not listen to our conversation. So I and Son Sen could talk a lot about this and that. We touched on many issues in our phone conversation. Things happened long time ago. It's difficult for me to recall everything. So when you raise that matter in your reading of the document, it reminded me of things happened at that time. Everything at that time did not happen in the whole party. For example, when one was arrested and then Comrade Noy, who worked at the iron factory, that I could not remember the designated number for that factory. And when Von Vet was arrested, he was also arrested. The whole family was arrested. So that's my answer.
What I was asking you, to put it in a simple way, was it your idea to kill children and spouses, or did you receive an instruction from your superior, Son Sen?
President, please hold on. Answer. When the husband was arrested and then the spouse were also brought in. For the role of S21 as well as for every security centers throughout the countries, when the husbands were arrested, their spouse were also arrested. Just like the example I gave you earlier, and I can give you another example. There was a child whose name was Nong Chan Pal. I remember it very clearly. Tamok never sent comrades to S21, and when Nong Chan Pal was sent in, he gave us the report. And when I saw the biography of his mother, I understood that because his parents were arrested in the Southwest Zone, that's why Nong Chan Pal was also arrested and sent to us. They were arrested and sent to S21. S21 never went out to arrest people.
Let's go back to this, the three children of Song Un at M13. Who was this person, Song Un?
His name was Sang Un. He was perhaps a soldier or an evictee from Udong. I could not remember it well. He was not the personnel within the Communist Party of Cambodia. He was probably an old soldier from Udong.
And in relation to those three children, do you remember Son Sen saying something to you about what to do with the three children of Song Un?
I can recall some aspects of this event. Later on, when I raised the children, I could not keep them alive, and I reported to Brother Son Sen. And I told him that raising the children at the prison were not successful because we did not have the emotional attachment with the children. Anyone who raised children at the prison would not be successful. And then Brother Son Sen told us to have an absolutist stance, have a firm stance, separating between the friends and enemy. I tried my best to recuse the children, but my effort was not successful.
មានគ្រាន់តែការហូបចុកទេ
So raising the children did not involve only giving them food, but need to give them other things. For example, when the children live with their parents, they grew up well because they had emotional attachment with their parents. I tried to save their lives, but I could not, and because of this, I reported to the brother, and he told us to have clear stance regarding the enemy and our friends.
And what was the reason for the party's stance of also arresting and smashing the spouse and children? What was the reason for that?
President, Mr. Witness, please hold on. The floor is given to Counsel Victor Kope.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. I object to this question. We were talking about Son Sen, is my recollection. So now, all of a sudden, it goes from Son Sen to the whole party center. I don't think that is something that the witness was saying. In addition, I haven't objected to that, but I noticed that all those questions are related to topics which are outside of the scope of this trial. I'm surprised that the witness is now answering these questions. But mindful of what you said yesterday, Mr. President, that questions cannot be asked to the witness if they are in relation to topics outside of the scope. I think that is something that the prosecution should be reminded of.
Just briefly, the witness's testimony was about a practice that started at M13 and continued on during the regime. So this is evidence relating to policy and practice that is part of this case, and that it continued at S21, as we've already seen. In terms of my phrasing of the question, let me rephrase and focus on Son Sen. Mr. Kanguk, in the discussions, the many discussions you had with Son Sen or with other superiors or representatives of the party, did you learn what was the reason, why did they want to also arrest and smash the spouses and children of people who were accused of being enemies? What was the reason for that?
Son Sen always talked to me that when he talked to me, he was not in his capacity as the chief of the general staff. He was talking in the capacity as Angka. That means in the name of 870 unit. So Son Sen instruction was treated as the instruction from the party. So every comrade of the party had to follow the instruction from the party. As for the thinking of the Communist Party, at that time they used one phrase that means revenge they used one phrase that was eye for an eye, and that principle was contradictory to the Buddhist principle that revenge can be defeated by non-revenge.
let me read to you something you said to that effect on the 25th of June 2009. Your Honors, this is E3/5805, E3/5805 at 9:29 in the morning on 25 June 2009. Question: is it true that because there were children who did not have enough strength to do labor, and because S-21 did not want to spend food on them, that's why they were taken and killed? Answer: that is the second reason. The first reason is that the Communist Party of Kampuchea was afraid that the children would take revenge. That was the main factor, and nothing else could be used to counter that main factor. End of quote. You just mentioned hearing a phrase about revenge. Who is it that you heard speaking about concern that the children would take revenge? Who did you hear using phrases about that?
To my recollections, that happened since Bong Von was there. That is when I was in Om Leang, and that was to prevent any revenge. However, it happens rather frequently when I was with Von Wade. Regarding the class stance, that was part of theory of principle of the CPK as well as of other communist parties.
You made mention of this, and I want to go into some detail about the spouses of the spouse of Vorn Vet and also the wife of Vorn Vet's deputy. When Vorn Vet was arrested in late '78, and his deputy Cheng On was also arrested at that time, what happened to their spouses?
Yes, I recall the event. Regarding the arrest of the wives of Von Wade and Cheng On, they were arrested on the same day. Those women were taken to the Buddhist school of Sarmarat, and I was ordered to go and to take them. And in fact, there was no much benefit from the purpose of interrogating these two women. The main focus of the interrogation was on the brother Von. As I have just stated, I did not see the daughters of Von Wade. As for Paine, the son, I did not see him as well, and I concluded that they were taken by Pong's group and they were smashed, since there was no gain in keeping them for the purpose of interrogation. And Von Wade's wife actually arrived at S-21, and I was the one who actually took my groups to arrest them, according to the instruction from my superior. And later on, they were smashed since the interrogation was not thorough. Only the primary focus was on Von Wade and not on the Cheng On or these women.
Who was the superior who instructed you to arrest these wives?
At that time, it was Brother Noon who gave me the direct instruction, and Pong and Lin was the one who escorted me to go and arrest them based on the upper level instruction. I cannot recall exactly whether Brother Noon called me to give me his direct instruction, or whether the instruction was relayed through Pong or Lin. Comrade Lin was a member of the Ministry of S71, while I myself was at the office as 21. And the overall in charge person was Brother Noon. But Lin was the one who could actually convey the instructions, or was the one who implemented the instruction.
And you said that they were arrested at the Buddhist school. Are you talking about the same location where you would meet with Noon Chea?
Yes.
Was Noon Chea present when the wives of Vornvet and Chang'an were arrested?
It was the children who actually saw Uncle Noon, who were watching over from a distance. Brother Vint called me to help him, and I helped him to go outside, and I passed him over to Sriang. From my knowledge, on that day, the women were called to go and work by Brother Noon. That is, they were to work with Brother Noon at the Buddhist school of Saramaren. And upon their arrival, they were placed in separate rooms. And Lin took me there to show me the rooms where they were staying. Vent and Pos, that is, Pos, the wives of On, were called to go there to work there by Brother Noon. And it was Lin who escorted me with the force to go and arrest the two women.
What was the name of Vornvet's wife, and what did she do in the regime? I cannot recall her birth name, but her revolutionary name was Vân. So her husband was Von and she was Vân. As for the wife of Jane On, her name was Po, and Vân was in charge of a medical office of the Ministry of Industry, and the location was at a former Chinese hospital of Beijing. And the Ministry of Industry used the school opposite the Chinese hospital as the hospital for the industry, and Vân was assigned to work there. Thank you, International Deputy Co-Prosecutor. It is now convenient for a short break. We take a break now and resumed at 10:30 to continue our proceedings. Court officer, please assist the witness at the waiting room reserved for witnesses and civil parties, and invite him back into the courtroom at 10:30. The court